Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. So Jody Lynn, I'm feeling kind of safe today. We have an emergency worker here, right? So, I mean, are you feeling like I am? Like this is a safe environment today.
Yes, unless we have to go into training with her, because she was telling us a little bit about how crazy that is.
Yeah, well, fortunately, we don't have to, but I think that's why I'm not a firefighter.
Yes. I feel like you could save our life, Mila.
In a pinch, probably.
Well, we're also going to see if we can save the discussion today. I don't think we'll have a lot of trouble with that, but it's going to be a fun conversation. It's going to be an interesting one because we've had many people on the show who've been through, I mean, anybody who's been alive for, even a quarter of a century has had a whole bunch of experiences and has gone through the traumas and trials and tribulations of life to some degree. That's always where the most interesting stories are, of course. But I can't remember the last time we had somebody who went through the trials and tribulations of a sibling. That's an unusual one. We don't get that one too often. And yet that was precisely what you went through, and you turned it into a book, among other things. But I don't want to spoil it any further than that. I'm going to let you tell this story. But first of all, Mila Maxwell, welcome to the program. And second of all, tell us your story.
Well, thanks for having me. And yes, the book, I wrote a book, and it focused a lot about growing up with my sister, Sarah, who has cerebral palsy. And it was never something that I was like, oh, at this point in my life, when I reach a certain age, I'm going to write a book. It had been mentioned to me at some point, like my aunt had said a long, long time ago when I was actually still in university, she said, you should write a book. And I was like, okay, like I was 22 years old, like, no. And something my husband would often say, like, oh, journalism background, you should write a book. And he, I think, was like, my aunt was thinking more of like a self-help book because I struggled with a lot of anxiety when I was going through school. And then my husband, Jeremy, I think he was thinking more of a kid's book. But the idea came about as I was falling asleep one night. And it was basically just the sentence. And I kind of sat up in bed and I said, that's a book. I started writing the very next day.
Wow.
And I didn't stop until the book was done 3 years later. So it was kind of
I hope you got some sleep in the middle there.
Oh, I did. Yeah, sometimes. But at the beginning, it was almost like once that floodgate of creativity was open, I would get up in the night and I had this whole notebook, and I got a second notebook and a third, and all of these things just started kind of coming out. And it was not always nice things to confront. A lot of things I had pushed down, a lot of things I had repressed and didn't want to deal with. So writing the book gave me the chance to kind of process some of that. But I chose to write it in fiction, which I think surprised a lot of people when I told them, because I started writing memoir and it felt very one-dimensional. So I said, I'd like to have some fun with this. It was a very heavy subject for me to process and to write about. So I thought, well, if I write fiction, then I can add some layers. I can add some things that maybe had some truth to it, but maybe were too hard to talk about, or had some truth to it, but didn't fit the way that it actually happened. So I really had a lot of fun writing it. It was a very healing experience. And I'm so glad that I stopped long enough to actually listen to that little voice and to go with it. And here I am.
We're glad you listened to it too. I mean, it's a good thing. And we've both been through writing processes. I've actually written 2 books and edited a third. I know what that's like. It's a life to itself while you're doing it. And
yes, but yeah. And I think at the time I needed that. I had just sold a business. I was extremely burnt out and I just needed a little bit of time. And my husband had been not pressuring me, but gently nudging me in that direction to say, can you please not work for a little bit and take care of yourself, take care of our family, look after yourself, but figure out what it is you would like to do, what brings you happiness. And it happened to be this.
And it has an unusual title, Finding Lady Baltimore. Where did that come from?
It was not always called that. In the writing phase, it was called The Blue Suitcase.
Okay.
And then and I'm not spoiling anything because there is actually a suitcase on the cover. I'll show you mine with all the notes and the Post-its and stuff. But there is a suitcase, so I'm not spoiling anything.
Okay. Okay.
So when I was writing it, I thought, well, the blue suitcase, like, yeah, it's intriguing, but it could probably be better. And my editors agreed. They were like, let's work on brainstorming a more intriguing title. So I had decided that the main item in this book that was going to allow me to see other people's points of views and kind of move the story along was going to be a suitcase. And I just happened to choose the color blue because I grew up on the ocean, love that color. So I was starting to describe this suitcase and I said, well, it can't be a modern suitcase. It can't have zippers. It can't be like a suitcase that I have myself now. It has to be an older suitcase that might wash up on shore. So I just happened to type up vintage blue suitcase, and exactly what I had pictures in my mind was what Google brought up, and it was a Lady Baltimore brand suitcase.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's where that came from. Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of people were like, oh, is it based in Baltimore? I'm like, no. Like, so, there was actually, I did a podcast a few months ago and the man was from Baltimore.
That must have been a fun conversation.
Yeah, it was neat. He's like, oh, so it has nothing to do with Baltimore. I was like, no, it doesn't.
Just the brand. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give us any semi-spoilers?
There's so many layers and so many themes that I could literally talk about one storyline and it would not spoil anything. But basically, so the idea that had come for this book was, what if something happened to me that would allow me to see my sister's perspective? Because Sarah, while she can speak, she can, she can walk, she can talk. I like to think she has a deeper level of understanding, but she can't always express it. Mm-hmm. So you might say to her, how do you feel about that situation? Oh, fine. But she would never go deeper than that. So I think a lot of my anxiety as a child was worrying, wondering, always curious, like what she was holding back, what she was going through, what she felt about something. So the idea came when the sentence just came to me very organically one night as I was falling asleep. And it said, Martha was only 17 years old when her entire life flashed before her eyes, except it wasn't her life at all. It was that of her younger sisters. And it's weird because Martha, I don't know where that name came from. In the book, the protagonist, who is based on me, her name's Morgan. And I was very strategic with the names that I chose for my sister and I because of their meanings. Morgan has a lot to do with the sea. Sadie has a lot to do with Sarah's character. So, basically the story revolves around me finding the suitcase. And whenever I open it, it has different things within it. And those different things correspond with a specific character. And I'm able to see what they have gone through or what they're going through. So it allows me to see and understand other people's perspectives and why they might be the way that they are.
Cool.
Okay. It gives us a little bit of a taste for it. Let's go behind the scenes though, because obviously this is based on your experiences with your family. Tell us a little bit about what that was like.
So I think, and I don't like to generalize because I don't have a whole lot of friends that have siblings with disabilities, but from the research that I've done, I definitely was not alone in the way that I was feeling. And I kind of wish I would have known that when I was younger. But I think as someone, and maybe the older sibling of a younger sibling that has a disability, I think you take on a parent role. You become very responsible very early. And you hold things back. You hold yourself to different standards. You might not express how you feel because you might assume that your parents have enough on their plate that they might not want to deal with the maybe more trivial things that I had been going through. So whether it was subconsciously or implied, I just learned to maybe not share things that I was feeling and really hold them to myself. But I think it really hurt a lot of relationships back then because I wasn't really being my true self. I wasn't even like, I look back to like old boyfriends that I was putting up these walls that weren't allowing them to see the real me, because I was afraid of being emotional. I was afraid of being needy. I was afraid of being all these things that I was so conditioned to not feel, that it was, I think it hid parts of myself that I've only recently learned to express and to show and to say, no, that's okay to be angry and frustrated. It makes you human. Whereas when I used to feel those things as a younger person, I would feel horrible about having those emotions, to think, oh, why am I so frustrated? I'm such a terrible person. It's like, no, you're a very normal person that just doesn't know how to express yourself. So there's a lot of that in the book.
Do you recall in your own development, do you recall, was there a tipping point where suddenly you were able to make those connections, or was it something that just kind of happened slowly over time? How did that play?
Motherhood.
Aha.
Yeah. As soon as Bennett came out, it was almost like an awakening that I don't know if it was, I remember one night he would have been a week and a half or 2 weeks old. And obviously you're so sleep deprived. And I remember just crying about something stupid that had happened when I was like 8 or 9 years old. Some kid had pushed me on the playground, and I was crying about it. And my husband's like, what is going on? And I'm like, it's happening. But I think it was all of these things that I had pushed down, that maybe I was just so tired of pretending. Or I like to think that these things all came about so that I was not transferring them over to my son as I was raising him.
No, that was a priority.
Yeah. And it was, and also as he became older and started going to school and making friends, realizing certain things that I had maybe not confronted with my friends, that I was able to teach him, like, hey, the way that person is treating you is not right. And you are allowed to say something. You are allowed to not spend time with that person. We can put boundaries on that. Things that were never done when I was younger. It was almost like, I don't know if people just didn't know about it or pretended that didn't happen. So yeah, it was that was a huge tipping point for me, was becoming a mother.
Do you recall, I mean, you say you're the older of the two. How much older are you than your sister, by the way?
Only 18 months.
18 months. Okay. So you don't have a memory of being conscious and not having the baby sister?
Not really. I mean, I think subconsciously a part of me understood when she was born that there was something wrong. Like, she didn't come home. She was transferred to a different hospital. She had her days and nights mixed up. And all of this I just know from having conversations with my parents while I was writing the book. So I think, maybe there's a part of me that maybe didn't have her needs met back then, because she was needing so much more help and wondering, like, is she going to make it through the night? Is she going to stop breathing again? And like all these things, right? So I think from a very, very young age, I became very independent. And I'm not like, this is nothing against my parents. They were and are so wonderful. But I think, whether I would have been as independent and strong-willed as I am without her, I don't know, but I'm okay not knowing, because I'm pretty happy with the way things turned out.
That's an interesting point, because we've had many guests on the program and co-hosts as well who cite some traumatic event that happened in their lives and now point back to that traumatic event and say, I would never want to go through it again, but that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I became stronger, faster, smarter, whatever it was. I'm more successful. I mean, it's almost always a case of pointing to something like that and saying it made me better.
Yeah, and I think you grow from your challenges, and you can choose to have them define you in a negative way, which I think a lot of people do that.
It's not hard to spot, actually.
Yeah. Or you can choose to say, I went through this and I'm going to choose to grow from it and be better because of it. And there is a part in the book, it'd be just my luck if I could find it, but there is a part that I have a discussion with my father. And this is actually, it's again, written as fiction, but this is actually true. I said to Dad, I wonder who she would be if she didn't have cerebral palsy. And he said she wouldn't be her. And then I chime in and I say we wouldn't be us either. So
that's a very good point. I love that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you come through something like this, you're getting challenged in so many different ways, just as she's being challenged too. I mean, you're being challenged with the fact that she's challenged on so many things.
Yeah. And it's hard because I didn't realize it at the time. I know about it now, and I know I was very empathetic, very sensitive. I picked up on things that maybe other kids didn't, because they didn't have to grow up in that situation. That, I always learned to monitor, like, does she need to use the washroom? Is she going to laugh so hard she's going to pee herself and embarrass herself? All these hyper vigilant things that I had to maybe unlearn as I became a parent to a child that doesn't have a disability, that can say, hey, mom, can you pull over? I have to pee. Or, hey, mom, my ear hurts. Can you take me to the doctor? Whereas with Sarah, mom always has to guess, always has to kind of, watch. So yeah, that became exhausting too. And I think when you're an empathetic person and you're sensitive, you have to learn to put these boundaries upon it, to say, I cannot care about everything and everyone. And I did for a long time. I was always managing the room. I was always worried how I made people feel. And now it's like, you know what? That's on them. Like, I try to be a good person. I try not to be rude. There are times that maybe things will get misconstrued, and it's like, well, so you have an issue with it, they'll contact me and they'll say, hey, you said something or you did something. Can we talk about it? I don't overthink the way that I used to after writing this book.
Yeah, what happened? Was it just the process of writing the book that helped with that transition, or was it something deeper, or perhaps age? Like, it just feels like it was a switch that was flipped. But that's a really difficult switch to turn off.
Probably a lot of things that happened at the same time. And it was, like I joined the fire department. I have this friend in the fire department that does not bullshit. And he, I think, has been a blessing in disguise, because he's taught me that he's like, you know what? You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You don't have to make people feel a certain way. You don't have to be responsible for that. He's like, he basically looked at me and said, you are enough the way you are. And that's good. And it was the friendship that I had been missing my whole life. And I feel like ever since I met him, and, joined the fire department and really listened to what I needed, especially in this book writing process. All these walls that I had built around myself kind of, strategically came crumbling down. And I mean, I'm still very aware of which ones and when they need to be put up, because I don't think anyone or everyone needs or deserves access to your energy. But it was just that one person that kind of just saw me for who I was and was like, no, like, stop trying to prove anything, because you're fine the way you are. And I think being friends with him taught me to love parts of myself that I maybe had always been ashamed of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a lot of things happened in the summer of 2022 that kind of put me on this track.
Well, not the least of which you mentioned 2022. We pretty much just a little bit earlier come out of a pandemic.
Right.
So it was an ending period as well as a beginning period.
For sure. And I think, the pandemic, I mean, we look back on it and think negatively for certain things, which it was, but a lot of things, it taught us to put boundaries up. It taught us to say no. It taught us to say, no, I'm not comfortable with this situation, so I'm not going to do it. It really taught us a lot of good things, and still things that we're implementing now. A lot of people still work from home. A lot of people, right? You're not as scared to do the status quo as we were before.
That's been a change for me, because I've worked for myself full time since just after the turn of this millennium.
Okay.
And for most of the time leading up to the pandemic, people would talk to me and say, what do you do? And I say, well, I work from home. I do this. I'm an entrepreneur. And very often the comment would be, I could never do that. I would say, why? Because, well, I just couldn't be at home all that time. It would just be too much for me. And I'd say, no, it's actually pretty good. I mean, it's an enjoyable experience. Yeah, you do have to kind of set boundaries about, now you're at work, now you're at home. You have to figure out ways to do that, but it's not too bad. Then the pandemic comes along, and now all of a sudden everybody understands it. I have never had to explain it since then. No, because everybody went through it. And look how many people, I mean, like you said, it became a thing. Now all of a sudden, the biggest job benefit you can have is to work from home.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Before the pandemic, that wasn't even on the list.
They didn't know what they were missing.
They didn't. No. Jody Lynn, you know what I mean. You went through the same thing.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I had a home office before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic happened, I went to working from home, and it was weird at first. Like that separation, not knowing, whatever. And then I was like, this is glorious. Favorite part is having a full kitchen and all the food. And you don't have to think about what I'm going to make for my breakfast or my lunch or whatever, or snacks. It's just all right here. I can eat whenever I want. I love that.
It's a beautiful thing. It's fun. It's exciting. And it brings a new dimension to the work that you do, to the kinds of things that you give your effort to. Yeah. And it almost becomes a filter, I think, to distinguish between work that you really do because you enjoy it and work that you do just for the paycheck. Because a lot of people switched careers as a result of the pandemic. Yeah. And I think that was one of the driving forces behind it.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah.
I mean, it was a challenge for us all, for sure, but another example of how you can go through something traumatic and be stronger and better for it at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. So, okay. So the book is out, right? The book has been out this year?
Yeah. It was released on April 15th.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, it's a significant day here in the U.S. It's called Tax Day, but we won't go there.
No.
But okay. So it's been out since April. What's the reception been like?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't really know what to expect, but I think it kind of started. I built it up before the release date, and I used to own a business in town for 8 years, and I sold that right at the height of the pandemic in 2020. And
you sold the business during the pandemic.
Yes.
That's a feat.
See.
I know. So backing up a little bit, I had taken over this nutrition business from people that I knew back in 2012. And 2018, 2019, I was kind of like, you know what? Like, I'm feeling extremely burnt out. I said, I don't know if I can keep doing this, because it was nutrition consulting. So it was like one-on-one or a couple would come in and chat with me about their fitness goals, weight goals, anything. It wasn't just weight based. It was, I want to run a marathon. I want to cut out sugar, whatever. So I did that and I really enjoyed it, but just became very burnt out by it. And I had heard about this couple that might have been interested in buying it. So I had approached them in January of 2020, said to them, look, like I'm just kind of thinking this is, it's run its course for me. I'm a little bit tired. Would you be interested in buying it? Her and her husband. And she was like, yeah, absolutely. So we had some chats, and then of course, March shut everything down. And I thought, oh my gosh, like they're not going to want to buy it now. And sure enough, they were still interested. So in August 1st, we made the switch and I sold it to them. And luckily, so I had met a lot of people throughout those 8 years in the community. So I had a launch party in mid-May for the book, and I think close to 100 people came.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was shocked. Like we had a room that it's actually where we have our fire banquet. So I knew about this room that you can fit, whether 15 people show up or 115 people show up, the room, they can make it smaller or bigger. So we had kind of an agenda of, okay, people are going to arrive. We're going to chit chat. I'll do a reading from the book. My cousin was the MC. We kind of had a presentation, Q&A, all that stuff. So it just kind of happened organically that people started getting in line and they wanted to buy books, and I was signing them. So I was just really busy doing that. And I looked up and I was like, oh my God. So they had set up the room for 77, and my husband had to go back and say, can you make the room a little bit bigger? So it was, oh my gosh, it was beyond my wildest dreams. So having said that, I think the word of mouth with that really helped to grow it. And I did self-publish. So I'm my own distributor, my own marketer. So I approached, like here, we don't have Barnes & Noble. We have chapters in Indigo. So I approached one in Moncton, and she was fantastic. And once you're in one, it really helps you get into the others.
Sure.
So I'm in most of the ones in New Brunswick, a couple in PEI, some of them in Nova Scotia. So yeah, it's been fun, like doing book signings and different events, and always thinking of ways to promote. So it's been, yeah. And I like that I have the freedom to say, okay, I'm a little burnt out with other things right now. I'm not going to pursue that. Like I was supposed to go do a book signing in Charlottetown on the weekend, but ended up having fire training, so I had to cancel. So yeah, I tell myself, like, there's no rush. Like all these books have been out for years and years, and we're still discovering them. So I don't have to do all these things right now. It's like I can still do book signings in 2 or 3 years. Like it's not a have to do it, do or die kind of thing.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, you get to set your own schedule, your own agenda, and follow what the path that you want to follow. If you're curious, I can tell you about another friend of mine, former guest on the show as well. He wrote a book about law of attraction called The Last Law of Attraction Book You'll Ever Need to Read. And he has sold 150,000 copies of it.
Wow.
And when he got to 100,000, I asked him about it. I said, how did you do that? And he said, it's really simple. Every day I did one thing at least in service of the book.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole secret. And he's been doing that for
smart.
3 or 4 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it doesn't have to be these grand events, these exhausting, right? And I mean, summer was busy. I had a lot on the go. I had a lot of events and things like that. But yeah, I just try to put myself out there in a way that feels true to me. I call myself a social introvert. I enjoy it to a point, and then I need to kind of retreat and recharge. So when that feels a little bit overwhelming, I just step back and take a little break for a week, and then I get back at her.
And from his viewpoint, the most important thing is that you do at least one thing, because the trap you can fall into is, well, I'll just put it off for a while. But if you develop the habit of doing, answer at least one email, post at least one post, something like that, do at least one thing every day, that does a couple things. First of all, it gets you into the mindset, which of course is law of attraction, but it also gets you into the habit. And by having the habit, you're able to keep the momentum going, because you already have momentum in terms of what your daily activity is.
Mm-hmm. I'm writing this down.
There you go. Yeah.
Because I like that.
Yeah.
And I love anything like law of attraction, like anything like that. Kind of resonates with me. Yeah.
Well, that's where this show originated. I mean, I started the show 13 plus years ago because I needed help. After the first couple hundred episodes, I figured we'd covered it, but I wanted to keep going because I was enjoying it so much. So, 2,100 episodes later, we're still doing this, even though we don't talk a lot about law of attraction anymore. It's still in the title, it's there.
That's what it stands for. Exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect.
But no, this is fabulous. Jody Lynn, I think I asked you, have you written a book?
Yeah, I have a small book.
A small book?
Yeah, Abundance Consciousness, the 9.
Oh, that's right. Yes, of course. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But it's, I don't really think about it like a real book, like you guys have written.
What's the difference between a real book and a fake book? I'm curious.
Well, I feel like this is like a Cole's Notes version of something bigger. I just don't know what the bigger thing is. It's very small. I think it's like 20 or 30 pages. It's not very long. And I was going to say it's different because it just poured through me, like I channeled the book. But now talking to you, Mila, maybe that's how a book gets written. I don't know. But it came in like a fury, and all of the words came out of me. I channeled my guides, and within a few weeks, all of it was on paper. It was very quick, and none of it sounds like me. So I don't really think about it like I wrote it. My guide,
like an alter ego.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you ever read or listened to Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
No.
Okay, that was one of the books I think I read right before I started this journey, and I think it was the one thing that I listened to that was like, oh, like maybe I just need to, like, she talks about how if you're not writing, to continue doing something creative that will keep that going, whether it's gardening, painting, whatever, just to keep those creative channels moving. But she was saying how she mentions this author in her book, and she said that this woman would be gardening and she would get this sentence. I don't know if she's a poet or a storyteller or something. And she would have to run to the house before the sentence finished, and then she could write it down. And she said at one point she missed it, and she almost like grabbed it by the tail, and she ended up writing the sentence backwards.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can find, I don't know what chapter it was in, but yeah, I was like, that's so neat, like how different people are inspired in different ways to write or paint or whatever way they express their creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been an explosion of that. I mean, just in writing alone, literally hundreds of thousands of books are written yearly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
hard to stand out.
When I was growing up, if there was like 10,000 written, that was a big year. Now it's like 10 times that amount. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to stand out.
Yeah, and I think the process has become easier. Like before, you needed an editor and a publisher, and like that was just the way it was done. You couldn't just go on to KDP or whatever and upload your book to Amazon.
Right.
Yeah. Like 3 simple steps. So I don't know if it's really that simple. I've never done it, but that's what I hear. Like I have 2 cousins that are now both authors, and one was an accountant before, or a bookkeeper, and the other one, she does a bunch of different things in like the metaphysical healing space, and she's a hypnotist and different things like that. And they came out for our reunion. They're in BC, and they're both telling me that, like, you know, they quit their jobs and they have these books, and like the one has like an occult following, like with this book series, romance novels. But she's completely like quit her job, her day job, and that's all that she does now.
Wow.
Which that's
Awesome.
incredible. So inspiring. But
and I think like the self-publishing thing it's got pros and cons, because I think there's probably some really, really good authors out there that never wrote or never published because they might think, you have to query a letter to these publishers, and they may reject you, or they probably will reject you the first. And right, it's such a daunting thing to even think about doing. And then you've got these people now that maybe shouldn't be writing books that can, right? It's like, it's that balance of, right? It's like, just because you can write a book doesn't mean you should, because they might cut corners. They might, right? They might cut corners, and they might not go through the process because it is that simple to publish. But I like to think that every book out there will resonate with someone. So maybe my book is not for everyone, but someone else's book might be. So I tried to kind of be humble about that too, right? It's like,
when you mentioned that, it made me think of an author. I can't remember what her name is, but she had written a series of novels, and the novels, quite honestly, I didn't read all the novels. I would read snippets from them. Quite honestly, they were not well written. They weren't even well edited. But she sold them for like $1. You know, so she sold them really, really cheap, and she was able to just keep marketing and marketing. So she had this huge following the series. You know, so it just goes to prove it doesn't even have to be a good book. You just have to do the stuff and put it out there.
And that's bravery, right? It's like there's so many people out there that might not do that, thinking, oh, it's not good enough. It's like, well, how do you know if you don't publish it or you don't try?
Or how are you going to define what's good enough? And apparently it's good enough for a whole bunch of people who are willing to spend $1 on it each time. And she's written like 20 of them. I mean, she's written a whole lot in this series. She just puts out put it on another book, another one. She just keeps writing them.
Good for her. That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're definitely living in a different era, and it's good. I think that it's going to continue to explode. I don't think the explosion is done. I think we've seen the first blow of it, so to speak, the first wave of the explosion. I think we're going to get to the point where, not just with books, with all kinds of creative expressions, people are just kind of getting their feet wet. The internet is giving them the taste of it.
Yeah. And with social media, right? It's like you can promote if you're an artist, if you're a writer, if you're whatever you're doing, if you're a remodeler of homes, like you can put it out there now, and there's an audience for it.
Yeah. And even if there's not an audience for it, you can still put it out there. You can, in other words, you can create and you can express, and even if you have a small audience, your small audience can consume it, and it can even turn into a big audience if it's good stuff. People really like it. Right. So that just leaves all kinds of possibilities and opportunities that I don't think most people really grasp how far this can go. I don't know if you've thought about it, Jody Lynn. I've given some thought to it. I don't know that there are any limits as to how far this is going to go.
No. Well, and I don't really believe in limits in all things in life.
True.
It's
Yes.
limitless. You know, the
Mhm.
possibilities are endless. But one thing that struck me in our conversation today is something, Mila, that you said about it doesn't have to be right now, because it could be, 2 years from now that somebody picks up your book. Like, it's
Mhm.
there and it's written. And when you said that, I was reflecting on some of my favorite series, and they weren't brand new. Like, they were old books that I was like, oh my gosh, this is a TV show and I love it. And I need to know the story behind it or whatever. And then there's 20 books and I read them in 1 week because I don't do anything but read because I'm so excited about the books. I think that's another possibility, is like, maybe, if not today for that one person, it could be a year from now. And they're like, oh yeah, I want this book, or I want this book. Yeah.
And this is going to sound really mean, but I don't, if I overhear a book, I don't read it. I'm like, just because you're telling me this is popular makes me not want to read it.
I'm with you, actually. And not just with books. I mean, almost any kind of popular entertainment, I get really skeptical when it's popular.
Yep. And it's, I don't want to, I would not like this if someone did it to me. So I'm not going to name the names of the books, but I've seen a few, like 2 or 3 this past summer, that I'm like, oh my God, are we still on this friggin' book? Like, come on. Like, right. And it's like, because it's, they're traditionally published, so they have that marketing power. So I'm doing my best now to read like non-traditionally published books. I try to give more attention to indie authors. And I also try to stick to Canadian, to more local, just to kind of make sure that, the people around me are getting the attention that they need and not giving the attention to the ones that are already getting enough of it, right?
There are those who are getting enough attention. That's an interesting concept.
It irks me. I'm like, oh, this person again? Like, okay, I'm sure you're getting enough coverage. Like, move on to the next thing. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's actually an interesting idea, because I think everybody has a different idea of how much enough is for themselves or for others. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really matter which way you're looking at it. Everybody's going to have a different idea. That's why you have some people like my friend who literally just promotes his book. He's been promoting his book for years now. I mean, I published my 2 books. I promoted them for about a week and I was done. I didn't really want to do any of the promotion. I wasn't really trying to sell them. I just wanted to write the book. Mm-hmm. But he wanted to make sure his books sell. And so I don't even know what his limit is. I don't think he has one. I think he'll probably promote that book for the rest of his life.
That's
he'll
awesome.
Probably write a sequel at some point. Just because that's part of who he is. So how much is enough? It depends who you talk to.
Right.
That's right.
It's what's enough for you is really what the most important thing is. Let's get back to the topic, though, of how you ended up writing the book in the first place, what the subject matter was, and so forth. And you chose to do it as a fictional book, something that I feel particularly attached to, because my first book was similar. I wrote on a topic that is probably marginally more interesting than writing about molecular biology or something like that. I was writing about the monetary system, which is a great way to put people to sleep. But I chose to write it as a fictional book.
Okay.
Which actually came out pretty good. I didn't convince a whole lot of people that it was worth reading because it was about the monetary system. But nevertheless, the few who read it said, this is fun, this is interesting. And I say that because I think there's a lot to be said for taking a nonfiction topic and turning it into fiction for that exact reason. You can take something that's dreadfully dull, put some drama into it, and, oh, that's kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to know how your thought process worked on that. Because, I wouldn't say that assisted with disability is necessarily a dull topic, but it's kind of a sticky, challenging topic. And I'm thinking that the fictional approach may have actually made that an easier process.
Yeah, and it was for both reasons. I think I do a lot of things by feel. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel true to who I am, it's not for me. So I had started this book and I had an idea of what it was going to be. And when I was in high school, my dad used to be a big sailor, and he had asked me, would you like to do a semester abroad on a sailboat? And I had said no at the time, and I don't know why, but I've always regretted that decision. I wish I would have gone. I would have been able to go back and say, 1 semester in grade 10 or 11, go sail around the world and whatever. So that was going to be a big premise of the book. And I started writing it. I even interviewed a girl from back home that actually had done this semester abroad. And yeah, I was like, you know what, this isn't really working. And I had a friend in Toronto that was friends with this girl who was an editor, and she and I had worked together for a few months, and it wasn't really moving along too well. And she's like, well, I don't like fiction. I don't like dialogue. And I said, well, this isn't going to work. So we broke up essentially. And I said, well, I've got to find someone that can help me with this. So I ended up finding, very luckily out of the blue, this company out of Ontario called Working Writers Co. So I really like them because you don't have to send a final manuscript. You can, but they basically work with you as you're working on your manuscript so that when you're done working with them, your book's done, essentially. I mean, I still have to get it edited and proofread and all that. And I did make quite a few changes, but the bones of it were done. So I think for me, I needed that support because I was going in all these different directions. And I tried memoir for a bit, and I said to them, no, it just doesn't feel right. It just feels, I'm not excited about it. I don't like writing. So I said, I think I've got to go back to that original idea of fiction and stick to that original sentence that came to me that one night. So worked on some dialogue, worked on some ideas. And then, one of the conversations we were saying, like, what if there was a device? What if there was something that I find on the beach that allows me to see these other people's perspectives? And once we had that brainstorming session and that happened, the suitcase, it blew up from there.
That's fun. Yeah. And I appreciate what you go through there, because what you were describing, because for me, when I was writing my fiction book, first of two fiction books, actually, but the first one on the monetary system, I was trying to turn it into an interesting story. I wanted to create a good, dramatic story, but I didn't have any experience doing that. Mm-hmm. And my first draft really was not very good. I'm looking at this like, no, this doesn't work. I knew I needed help. Fortunately, I did have a resource. My sister was a theater major in school. So I just called her up. I said, PJ, you got to teach me how you tell stories, because I know you're good at storytelling. Tell me how that's done. And she, spent the time with me and helped me to do it and helped me to understand the different pieces, which helped tremendously. And when the final product was a whole lot better, and a large portion of that was due to the work that she put in to help me turn my really terrible piece into something that was actually fun to read.
But like you said earlier, it's like who gets to define what terrible is and what good is and what, and I think
well,
as
in
long
this case
as
it was me.
It was you, okay. Right, but it's like who out there is like, I mean, for me, spelling is a big thing. Like if there's misspelled words everywhere, obviously I'm going to be like, ooh, did this person really not spend any time reviewing? But yeah,
do you not type it in Word?
Yeah, like do you not see all these underlined red things that were highlighted? But yeah, the fiction piece was good because it was creative and it was fun, and it was taking a subject that was sometimes a bit too close to home, and it made me able to put a little bit of distance from it and actually dive in. And I think knowing that a lot of people from home are going to read this, I can always say this is fiction. Right. So whether someone thinks I'm writing about them, or whether someone, and sometimes it's obvious and I wanted it to be obvious. But yeah, it just allowed that extra layer of, I don't want to say protection, but that extra layer of this is fiction. It's based on my life, and you can think what you want about it. And if you think something's true, you can think it if you want, because I'm never going to tell you if it's true or not. In a lot of cases I did. Like I had some really close friends that were like, oh, did that actually happen? And I'd be like, no. Or was this so-and-so? I'd be like, yeah. Yeah, but no, it was good. It was a good way to go back and kind of honor some close friends that I grew up with, honor some people in my family that I'm still very close to, honor my grandparents that are a big part of this as well. So yeah, it was when I decided to publish it, I chose a company out of the States called selfpublishing.com, because they had the layout, they had the graphic design, they had everything. But they also teach you how to do it yourself if ever you want to do it again. So the person that I was talking with, or the coach, I guess, he said, next time you write a book, make sure you know your audience first. And I think that would be the only piece of advice that I would actually ignore, because I had already written this book and I wasn't going to go change it to have it have it tailored to a specific audience. I was like, I wrote it for me. I wrote it from my heart and soul, and it will resonate with whoever the heck it resonates with. I don't care what category it falls into. I don't care what age group it falls into. So that was a piece of advice that I was kind of grateful that I didn't know about, because I think the whole time I would have been writing it, I would have been thinking like, oh, is this for the right audience? It's like, who cares? Who cares who it's for?
I'm with you, actually. That was one of the things that tripped me up on my first book, was trying to figure out what the audience would want to know. And then I don't remember exactly what it was. Something my sister said. I don't remember exactly what it was, but the general idea of it was, no, you don't need to think about what the audience wants. You need to think about what the audience would respond to, which is a different thing.
And I think the audience can tell if you're being authentic or not. I don't like fakeness. I don't do fakeness, and I certainly was not going to do it in my writing process.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, she knew it from the point of view of being an actor, and so she would explain things off from that perspective.
Right.
But she went in when I was asking her for help on character development, because character is really important to me. It's something. It's sort of lost its appeal with many writers today. But when I'm writing something, character is the first thing that I'm thinking of, because I think it's the most interesting part of a story. And so she would tell me what it was like for her when she was creating a character to perform on stage, and how she would think about that. And when she told me about that just opened up all kinds of ideas for me. So, I mean, there's an example of how the advice actually was helpful to get in advance rather than waiting for it later on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was told when I was developing a character to really give them, like, even though you're not going to include, like in my instance with my sister, I was only including maybe some earlier parts, but it was like, give them a birthday, give them some hobbies, give them, right, what their favorite color is, it's like really add some depth. Even though you might only see this from the character, you have to give them kind of underneath as well. So people can tell if you haven't developed your characters properly.
In fact, for me, that's one of the most interesting parts of the process. I didn't know I had to do this, but once I talked with her and figured out what I had to do there, I started outlining my characters. Not so much outlining the story, but outlining the characters, giving them as much detail as I could, and all that kind of thing. And that was fun. I thought that was going to be a chore. But when the first time I sat down to do it, like, oh God, do I have to do this? But after I started doing it, this was interesting. It was because that's where I felt like I was creating the world. Not so much when I was creating the storyline itself. When I was creating the characters, that's where I felt like I was creating the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That and the just the descriptions. And I remember one night we had this working writers group that I was part of. Every Tuesday night we had a call. So we might have a guest speaker. We might have had a lesson that we worked on. So they might time us and say, okay, go write this theme and come back. So I remember one night Alex worked with us on descriptors, because me coming from a journalism background, we're taught to get to the point. We're taught to be very literal. We're taught to say what we need to say in as fewest words as we can. And Alex, one of my editors, had to remind me over and over again, Mila, you have a whole novel. You can be descriptive. You can you can layer this. You can add depth to it. You can take your time, because you have like 300 pages that you can do this with. So I had to kind of unlearn the journalism side of things and learn the creative writing side of things.
I would imagine the journalism side was helpful in the sense that when you're writing for publication as a journalist, you're wanting that first sentence to grab the attention of the reader to pull them into the rest of the article. That probably served you well. Yeah,
and that was something that we went back and forth on, because I really wanted to start the book. And this is another thing I think you learn when you write a book, is you learn what to let go of and what to really stick to. And for me, it was, I knew I wanted to write fiction. And I knew that the first page of the book had to be this conversation that I actually did have with my grandmother when I was younger about wanting my sister to be, quote, normal. And I remember that conversation. I must have been 5 or 6. And, you know, being upset about something, I can't remember what it was. And I said, I know it might not be like super attention grabbing, but I said, that is how I'm starting this book, because I knew how I wanted the book to end. So for the book to end the way that I wanted it to, it had to start out the way that I wanted it to. So you kind of learn as you go to what to, like, which guns to stick to and which not to. But I did start, you know, yeah, I know what you mean about that sentence that grabs your attention. For me, it was more chapter 2 that I did, but I'm okay with the way things start out.
Can you do a little 1 paragraph reading to give us a taste
Of the conversation?
No, from the book, I mean.
Yeah, but this is chapter 1.
Because it starts with the conversation. Oh, yes, right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so I just read the first paragraph. In 1991, when I was 6 years old, I sat at the head of the oval mahogany table in my grandparents' old farmhouse kitchen and told Grams that I wished my sister was normal. I don't remember what made me say this on that particular day. Maybe it was something that had happened at school, making me realize that Sadie was, in fact, different. It was something I had suspected for a while. Or maybe it was because she often lost her cool, sometimes biting her arm to calm herself, which made me feel uncomfortable. I hated the way people looked at her sometimes, looked at us as a family. I hated how it made me feel. I wondered what they thought. I wondered if she noticed. I started blaming her for how I felt. Angry, frustrated, misunderstood, secondary.
Secondary. Yeah. You saved the really gutty word for last.
And I do that a lot in my writing. I tend to just use almost words as a sentence, and try to pack some, not some heat, but pack some emotion into it. So
yeah, and it worked.
Okay.
So how did your family react to the book?
So Mom read it when it was still in the beta reader phase. So I had printed a few copies, and I really wanted her to read it for a lot of different reasons. To say like, oh, is it obvious that this person's this person? Did I use the right title for Sarah's doctors? Because she has certain doctors. She had surgeons, she had orthopedic surgeons, she had all these things. So I wanted to make sure that that was right. And I wanted to make sure that I was reminding myself, like, I want to tell my side of the story. I want to be respectful to what they might or might not want to share. So I let Mom read through it the first time, and she changed a couple things, just more the doctors' titles and things like that. Dad was different. He wanted to read it once it was actually published. I was very nervous about him reading it because I think when you're a teenager, I think sometimes maybe you don't like your one or two or both parents. So he and I sometimes had, we butted heads a lot. Come to find out it's because we're very similar. So I was just afraid that he would read this and his feelings would be hurt. But he actually read it and sent me a very nice message and said, you had nothing to be scared of. Your feelings were what they were and they were valid. And I'm very proud of you. So it kind of healed our relationship, and it kind of, all these things that I thought were true for so long were never true. It was just these assumptions that we had of each other and these things that were unspoken that writing this book made us talk about. And now we're restoring a 1988 Ford F-150 together. So
wow.
Yeah. Well, he's 6 hours away, and he has a lot more free time than I do. So he found it, and he messages me, and he's like, I found these wheels. What do you think? And I'm like, yeah. So I kind of give him the okay, and we're talking about paint colors and things like that. So it'll be here next spring. So it's going to stay at their house until then, because he can store it in my grandparents' old barn. But cool. Yeah. So who knows what writing a book will do for you? For me, it was an extremely healing process. And I think I hesitated maybe a little bit behind the scenes because I was still afraid that I never wanted people to think that I was complaining. And I learned throughout all of this that just because my struggles were maybe not as severe as my sister's doesn't mean that they should have been diminished. So my hope, if people read this book and when they read this book, is that whether they grew up with a sibling with disabilities or not, that they see themselves in some of the characters, some of the different parts. And I just did a podcast the other day, and there's a section that I refused to go to church one morning because there's something that happens at work that makes me realize, like, is this the kind of people that go to church? And this podcast host, his parents were actually ministers, and he really resonated with that section. So it's neat to talk to different people because they all pick up on something different. They all resonate with a different character or a different event that happened. So that's been really neat.
That's really good. I love that. So the book is called Finding Lady Baltimore. I presume it's on Amazon. Do you have it? And you mentioned that you have it in some of the stores in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, I think you said?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon, and it's in chapters Cold and Indigo in the Maritime provinces.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So very good. Now people can know where to find it. Do you like hearing from readers?
I do. I love hearing from readers, good or bad.
Do you have a way for people to reach you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. If you just type up Mila Maxwell author, I should show up there.
All right, good. So we normally provide in the show notes, we provide a link to a website or a webpage. Do you want us to link to like the Amazon page? How do you want to do that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
I have a website, but it's pretty basic.
That's all right. You can put it wherever you want.
It does the trick, but I don't know how many people use it or see it. So yeah, Amazon's probably best.
Okay, so I'll have Jen link to the book on Amazon then.
Perfect.
So, excellent. We have a couple of things we like to do at the end of the show. First one is I like to ask Jody Lynn to tie it all together. And you got a lot of material today, Jody Lynn. Where are you going to draw from?
Ooh. I think that for me anyway, this conversation is so special because although maybe I don't think that I'm an actual writer. You are. I have always been a writer in my entire life. I always put pen to paper since I was a little kid. Loved writing poems and stories and different things. And I think the biggest takeaway I have from our conversation is how healing putting some of these thoughts down are, whether you create fictional stories or you are doing a memoir of some kind. Both are so incredible for not only the author, but the reader to have more depth and to explore and to create and to recreate, I will say, the story of our lives. We talk about this lots in the law of attraction, that we are the creators. We are co-creating with the universe. And writing a book, telling a story, is a live version of that in color. So thank you for the reminder that even if you're not an author or you are an author, both ways, we're always and constantly creating and recreating. And it's beautiful how you've taken something so difficult to move through and honored yourself through that process and built and recreated something so beautiful. So thank you, Mila.
Thank you. And I think back to that point that you were just talking about is you don't have to publish a book if you write it. You can write it for yourself.
True.
And, I was never a journaler. I never got into it. So you might be a person that likes to journal and you might think, oh, there's something here. Maybe I will share the story. I have a friend right now that's writing a book that has no intention of publishing it. She just wants to process things and get through it. And I think maybe for someone that's never done this or is apprehensive about it, go that route. Just write it and see what comes of it. And you might share it with someone that might say, hey, like, this could be something. So don't be afraid of people's opinions. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And I think if you're doing it for the right reasons, people will recognize that.
I agree.
Beautiful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Final thing I like to do at the end of every show, I've been doing for a few years now. I noticed that because we now live in the 21st century, we're all publishers in one way or another, whether we're writing a book or posting on social media or sharing photos on Instagram or whatever it might be. And we're touching people, many of whom we've never met, never seen, and we don't know what the reaction or response is going to be. We hope it's good. And it also occurred to me that we don't get a lot of credit for that. In fact, we don't get much of any credit. We may see that there were, X number of likes, so that's about it. A few comments, but not a whole lot beyond that. And I thought, That's not so good, because we deserve a lot of credit. All of us who are putting anything out there, but particularly if we're trying to help somebody else who might be going through something similar to what we went through, or who might gain some value out of it that we didn't even realize that we're giving them the value out of it, along the lines of what you were talking about. No matter what it is, we're still helping people, and we should get credit for it. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to tie that into the show. I can do that. So Mila, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, your readers of your book, the people who are listening on the podcast, listening on this podcast, reading the stuff they put out there, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really important. That's why I do that each time. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story. Good luck with the continued sales. I'm sure they're going to be good, especially with the way you feel. That's the biggest thing. When you feel good about what you put out, other people are going to feel good about it too. That's where the real word of mouth comes from. I mean, you experienced it with the people who were your former clients. Mm-hmm. Well, they felt good with you. That's why they wanted to come to that book launch.
Right.
And that comes through. It comes through very loud and clear in the interview as well. So yeah. Keep doing what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.